Picture this. A shopping mall so vast that you could fit 16 football fields inside it. Corridors of gleaming marble that stretch so far into the distance they seem to curve with the earth. Storefronts designed by architects who flew in from Milan, Tokyo, and New York. Air conditioning so powerful you need a jacket in the tropical heat, and absolutely terrifyingly nobody inside. Not a handful of people. Not a quiet Tuesday afternoon. Nobody. This is not a mall in a forgotten Rust Belt town. This is not a retail center in a struggling developing nation slowly being swallowed by jungle. This is Singapore, one of the wealthiest, most meticulously engineered, most strategically positioned city-states in the history of human civilization. And right now, something is going very, very wrong. The numbers coming out of Singapore's tourism and retail sectors are not just disappointing. They are the kind of numbers that make economists go quiet mid-sentence. They are the kind of numbers that make city planners reread their projections 3 times before accepting what they are looking at. Singapore spent decades constructing an image so polished, so invulnerable, so permanent that the world accepted it as a fixed point of global commerce, a place that could not fail because it had simply designed failure out of its own DNA. But you cannot design away gravity. And right now, Singapore's retail and tourism empire is in freefall. Let us go back to the beginning, because to understand what is collapsing, you first have to understand what was built, and more importantly, why it was built the way it was. Singapore became Singapore through a singular act of national will. When the British withdrew and the Federation with Malaysia dissolved in 1965, the island was left with no natural resources, no agricultural land to speak of, no military, and no obvious reason for the world to care whether it survived or. Lee Kuan Yew, the country's founding prime minister, looked at this set of circumstances and made a decision that would define the next 60 years. He decided that Singapore would not compete on what it had. It would compete on what it could become. And what it would become was the world's most frictionless place to do business, to transact, to pass through, and to spend money. The airport became a statement. Changi Airport did not simply want to move passengers from planes to cities. It wanted to be a destination in itself. And for decades, it succeeded so completely that travelers would intentionally book long layovers just to spend more time inside it. The Jewel Complex, with its indoor waterfall cascading through 7 floors of retail, food, and entertainment, became a global architectural icon. People flew to Singapore just to see Changi Airport. Think about that for a moment. They took an international flight specifically to visit an airport. The malls followed the same philosophy. Singapore built retail infrastructure at a scale that made visitors from vastly larger nations feel physically disoriented. The country of 5.9 million people accumulated one of the highest densities of retail space per capita on Earth. Every major district, Orchard Road, Marina Bay, Bugis, Jurong, was threaded with interconnected mega malls, underground shopping networks, and air-conditioned pedestrian highways that ensured a Singaporean resident could walk enormous distances across the city without ever stepping outside into the heat. Shopping was not merely an activity in Singapore. It was the architecture of daily life. And for years, the tourists came. They came from Indonesia, from Malaysia, from China, from India, from Australia, from Europe. They came for the food, for the safety, for the seamlessness of a city that simply worked in ways that cities in far larger and richer nations did not. From Indonesia, from Malaysia, from China, from India, from Australia, from Europe. They came for the food, for the safety, for the seamlessness of a city that simply worked in ways that cities in far larger and richer nations did not. They came to Orchard Road and spent money in ways that retail analysts tracked obsessively. They filled the hotels that lined Marina Bay. They photographed the super trees and gardens by the bay at night and posted those images to hundreds of millions of social media feeds worldwide, creating a perpetual, self-refreshing advertisement for Singapore's spectacular brand of luxury urbanism. The model appeared unbreakable. Then the cracks began. And here is the thing about cracks in something this carefully engineered: they do not appear gradually and obviously. They appear suddenly, in places you did not think to look. And they are much deeper than the surface suggests. The first signal that something structural was shifting came not from a financial CR. Specifically, the behavior of the one demographic that Singapore had quietly structured its entire retail economy around, the high-spending international tourist. That tourist began to disappear. Not overnight, gradually at first. A slight softening in Chinese visitor numbers that analysts initially attributed to post-pandemic friction. A dip in average spending per visitor that strategists described as temporary. But the vacancy on Orchard Road did not reverse. It deepened. Flagship stores began quietly consolidating. Not announcing departures. Not making headlines. Simply not renewing leases. Simply withdrawing. Walk down Orchard Road today and you will find something no urban planner ever designed into Singapore's models: empty storefronts. Paper taped across the inside of the glass. On a street that once represented the peak of global retail density, empty storefronts are more than visual gaps, they signal structural failure. Now consider the malls. Vast, architecturally ambitious complexes built to accommodate tens of thousands of shoppers, sitting nearly empty in the middle of a regular day. Escalators running between floors where no tenants operate. Security guards standing at entrances of stores with nothing inside them. Food courts with chairs stacked at midday. This is not gradual decline. This is visible, walkable emptiness. How does this happen to Singapore of all places? Three forces hit at the same time. First, regional competition. Cities like Kuala Lumpur, Bangkok, Bali, and major Vietnamese hubs have dramatically upgraded. They now offer comparable, sometimes superior, experiences at significantly lower costs. Singapore is still expensive. The quality gap has closed. Second, the transformation of the Chinese tourist market. Chinese visitors were once the backbone of Singapore's retail economy. That flow has weakened due to economic pressures, domestic consumption policies, and alternatives like Hainan. The impact is system-wide. Third, the changing meaning of travel itself. In the digital era, much of Singapore's appeal, its architecture, shopping, curated experiences, can be consumed remotely. What once required physical presence is now pre-experienced online. The uniqueness has been diluted. Singapore's strengths, efficiency, order, perfection, translate poorly into experiential scarcity. And that is the paradox. Singapore did everything right for the world that existed. But the world changed. The government is responding, investing, expanding, pivoting toward wealth management, events, and ultra-high net worth visitors. But these are supply-side solutions to a demand-side shift. And the math is unforgiving. Singapore built capacity for a level of demand that no longer exists in the same form. The city is not collapsing. Its fundamentals remain strong. But the retail and tourism model that defined its global identity is under real, structural pressure. This is not a dramatic collapse. It is something slower. Corridor by corridor. Store by store. Lease by lease. Until one day, you are standing in the middle of it, with escalators running, lights on, architecture intact. And nobody there. Singapore built the future better than almost anyone. Now it is living in a present that future was not designed for. And the question is simple. Can it reinvent itself again? Or has the world moved on?